Hello, I'm William Cook, and this is my video discussion board presentation for week 6. This week we're looking at historical newspapers and how they can target and bring history alive. Traditionally, I've been doing David Crockett for most of these. However, with the historical newspapers, a lot of them are 1900s, which David Crockett died in 1836. So these were a little outdated. However, on the Chronicling of America website, I was able to find a lot on David Crockett. Now, the great thing that's interesting about David Crockett is the use of newspapers was essentially his fall in the elections. That's why he lost re-election, came back, and then lost again. So newspapers certainly tell a great story of David Crockett, and I'm going to continue to do so with this presentation. My presentation would be targeted to a younger group of students looking to get a career in political science and possibly journalists as well. The age group, obviously, you look at the younger age, the young 20s, early 30s for some. We wanted to start with two of the historical newspapers that I found. The first one's Tennessee's Great Men. Now, the reason this is relevant is because they mentioned David Crockett personally, but it's also a continuation of the media use for propaganda to drive a political agenda. They were endorsing Richardson at this point in a re-election in the early 1900s. Now, the article talks about how Tennessee does not produce any more great men. And this was a reach for Republicans, trying to get them to vote for a Democratic candidate. They mentioned some promising candidates that were previous, to include David Crockett, against the Democratic Party, and how trying to target these people and sympathize, saying, yes, Crockett was a great man. They just don't make them like that anymore. And then comparing Richardson to David Crockett and also Sam Houston, somebody that David Crockett had fought with. Another one I looked at was One Man in Power, 1834. This was in the New York Times, talking about Crockett and his re-election process going against Martin Van Buren and Andrew Jackson. It contained a letter where he refers to Martin Van Buren as a perfect scoundrel and refers to Jackson as the devil. The timing of this article was also in line with an election, trying to recapture the spirit. I do think that journalists do tend to lean on history heavily when trying to push for elections these days, trying to grab on names such as Crockett, who was a legend in his own right, and try and sway them a certain one way or another. To draw more of a direct line to David Crockett and the media that played a part in his downfall, I looked at the Chronicling of America website, and this dates back a lot further than the historical newspapers link. So the first one I looked at was the Constitutional Whig. Actually, let's start with the Delaware Journal that was came out in March 3rd, 1829. This was a direct representative of the media and the newspaper dismissing Crockett and bringing him down. They talked about how he went crazy. That's how they the words they use: agitated, makes threats to those who oppose him. His character has been affected, and he has turned to religion out of his failure, while then subsequently giving an endorsement for Martin Van Buren. Then I looked at the Litchfield Enquirer from 1831, which was a counter to Jackson. They used everything that he used against Crockett, and acknowledged that Crockett was without scholastic knowledge, but knew the world and knew the wilderness. The Constitutional Whig also responds to Jackson's turning on him, calls him their uncle, and how once Crockett went against him, he was outcasted. They offered his endorsement and for re-election. So the big takeaway is the impact that media can have on elections. You can pull from history, you can use current events, but the journalists and media still, we see to this day, play a prominent role. Thank you.